right? But before we go into that, why do we want stories as our framework? So I'm going to turn it to you for a second. I love this part of the workshop. I want to hear from you. Okay? What comes to mind when you hear the word storytelling, right? You don't need to unmute. You can if you would like, but feel free to write a few words in the chat. I'll give you a few seconds here to think about it. Any word, there's no correct ones when you see the word storytelling or think about it. Okay. Do we have any brave souls that would like to type something in the chat? Anyone? One word, two words, any words. Okay, we got a couple. Conveying an idea and engaging. Engaging is the key word here that I'm looking for in what you wrote. When something's engaging, people remember it, right? You don't want people to go through your workshop and then in one ear out the other. So something can engage, connecting the dots to make it interesting, right? If something's boring, I'm not paying attention. That's half the battle, getting me to sit through it so that I can hear what you're saying instead of zoning out. Movie is a great word. A movie is a story, it's just a visual story. And in this way, it has a lot of the action, a lot of the elements that we just talked about. It has to be engaging, it has to be a story. I like this one, emotional connection. I always look for this specific word, emotions. Emotions are a very powerful vehicle to get you to do something, right? If I'm angry, for example, if your presentation makes me angry, that is something that could be channeled into action, right? Fun and engaging, yeah. Again, that goes back into keeping it interesting, keeping me paying attention. You want people to at least make it through your presentation, right? Storytelling is about imagination. Yes, you want people to put themselves in a situation, see themselves in the situation so that they can see, okay, I can also do something about this. I think I missed one before this. Storytelling is something which narrates the situation. Yes, narrate is very, very important because what you want to do is have something that you can follow, right? Beginning, middle, end, right? That's why we're kind of wired towards some of these hero stories, right? Hero story, you know that everything's fine, then something happens and it's a problem, and then they have a down part of the movie, then they learn or have some sort of realization, and then there's redemption. We're hardwired for it, we know it's going to somehow happen. Now, why am I bringing up some of these keywords? And I want to bring up the keyword that was brought in here, and I'm always looking for this: emotion, right? um, One of the starting points, and I have this sticky note on my monitor at work. Whenever I have to create a deck and start, I always think about what Brent Dykes says about data storytelling. So he is a thought leader in the data storytelling world, and he said people hear statistics, but they feel stories. Right. So it's a reminder to me as well. Every time I'm making a slide, am I just putting so much data and statistics in here? Are people even going to remember that? Right. So having a balance, you have to have some statistics, right? Um, but not completely the entire slide, right? You want to be able to connect it to something that they feel, right? And why is this a very effective medium? Well, let's get into data storytelling now, right? So data storytelling is quite effective because it merges two parts of our brain, right? You need enough data to act on the logical side of your brain, but you also want to feel that emotional side, the connection, right? If you put both together, that's a powerful slide, that's a powerful deck, right? We're going to do a couple examples later just to show you what I mean in terms of here's the data, but it's how you present it. However, before we get to that, I wanted to show you one last slide. What's the goal? Data storytelling, right? Well, really, it's providing just enough information that drives and moves people to action. The moving people to action part is that emotional part, right? You could give me a bunch of data and I say, I agree with you, I agree with you. But if I sit there and it takes me a month to do something, that's quite ineffective, right? So having kind of both enough data that's logical to get people to agree, yeah, actually your point is correct, but getting that emotional, that storytelling point, making people imagine or visualize what they do makes an impact, right? That's the part that's getting people on the emotional side, the storytelling side of things, right? Okay, let us take a look at a good example, and we're gonna do this little exercise here together. I love this one, right? This is kind of more of a silent exercise. That's what's fun. I see a lot of cameras off. You're reading. I know it's late, so I won't ask you to turn on your camera as we're talking. Don't worry about this. I want you to do this. Take a look at this data, right? I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to a minute. And what this data is, it's internet browser market share from 2010 to 2023. Okay. No right answers. Here's a couple guiding questions, right? Just think about in general, like what sticks out to you? Is it Chrome? Is it Internet Explorer? What jumped out at you first, right? So look at that. Here's some guiding questions to get you to think. I'll give you about 30 seconds a minute to just kind of digest this. Interesting. I like that. There is an answer here, but that's not the exercise. We'll get into it. Is it about how many users? Nope, this is just market share. So I think yes, I think it's specifically users here. But we're not analyzing anything yet. So I think that's enough to kind of just digest this. I love that there's answers here. Um, this is what we're gonna do. This is the actual exercise. Okay. And this is where you see data storytelling as a skill comes in. And this is what I mean. We're gonna play a game where in your head, you are going to work at various companies. Okay, so the first one, for example, Chrome is Google, right? So we're working at Google. Let's pretend we're like the product manager for Chrome at Google, and we're presenting to our stakeholders, right? Whether it's our shareholders or customers, something. We're going to present this data. And the idea is what is the story we're going to tell? The data is going to be exactly the same when we work at Google, when we work at Microsoft, when we work at what was it, Apple, right? So this is what it could look like. We're going to start with, hey, all of us here, we are working at Google. And now we have to present to our stakeholders. It could look something like this. Right. So Google, I saw a couple on here, which is great. They are probably the one that jumped out to me first. I'm going to go back. As you can see, the market share just really, really took off at a certain point. All of this data is going to be the same, by the way, the same chart or graph. But the story is right here at the top, right? If I'm working at Google, I'm just going to puff my chest out and look at us. We dominate the market. We went from less than 10% in 2010 to 64%, 3x more than our second largest competitor. Okay. Now, what's the data story here? I can maybe pinpoint different parts of this timeline that had really high growth. Maybe right here, 2012. What happened there? Right? There may be a story there. Or I could also pinpoint from 2018 to 2023. Why did it plateau? What's the story there? Right? So This is the idea of data storytelling. The graph, the chart, the data is the same, but what is the story that you're telling when you're trying to convince that audience to something else? Here's a harder one now, right? Let's look at Safari. So Safari, Apple, right? If we were now working at Apple, we're Safari, the product managers at Safari. We have to present to our shareholders, right? What would we say? What's the story, right? Could look like this. Safari defended 20% share despite home dominance. That's a pretty good message as well, right? Hey, let's be honest, Chrome dominated, but for Apple, that's not bad. Actually, in fact, it's actually grew. Look at this. From 2010 to 2023, it actually grew 100%, a little bit more than 100%, by 4x almost, right? What's the story there? I can make it personal. So it doesn't have to be at specific years. Let's make it personal. Um, my laptop, I use Chrome, but my iPhone, I use Safari. I never bothered to download Chrome on my phone. Why? You could go into a data story about that, right? Maybe after that, I would add another slide that would show maybe Safari on the mobile market share. That's also an interesting story. I'd be very interested to see what's the difference there, right? So maybe you're getting a hang of what I mean now by data storytelling. And look, it's the same chart. I'm not changing anything here. Let's do one more one. This one's a little bit complicated. Imagine if you were Microsoft, right? Well, how do I, you know, present to our shareholders that our Internet Explorer completely died? Look at that, how far it went down, right? Well, it could look like this. You acknowledge, yes, there's nothing that you could do that hides the fact that it went from 54% down to 0. But look at Edge. Okay. Where's the data story? I would look at that intersection right there, right? And you look at 2020-ish. What was happening globally at that time, right? Maybe there's a story there. So these are different ways to present the same information. I didn't change the info at all, but the messaging is different. The conclusion is different, right? The story is different depending on what you want to craft it as. And you can imagine the rest of the deck is going to be completely different based on this one slide. Okay. So this is the marrying of that emotional part of things, the logical side of things, right? We're going to come back to this in a second when we get to slide writing. I'm going to show you how to make individual slides. I wanted to shift gears though now, right? I'm going to give you the tools of how to do this faster, how to storyboard, how to make templates quite quickly. I'm not going to jump into too much of charts and graphs. I'm just going to give you a little introduction to Think So, enough for you to see the potential. And then the separate topics, the more advanced or intermediate topics, you can learn this afterwards. We had a lot of great online resources. So today it's just mostly an introduction so that you can make that great data storytelling deck, right? Okay, so with ThinkCell, if you've downloaded it and installed it, you're going to see in the top left corner right here, ThinkCell, right? And really, there's only going to be two sections I'm showing you today: charts for the charts and graphs, and the library feature, which will have a lot of templates in there to help build a foundation of the different slides in your deck quickly, right? But we'll get to that later. Let's start with the charts. Now, if I click on charts, right, you're going to see all the different charts and graphs here, right? And what I want to show you is that in charts, so this is a stacked bar just to kind of get you going. There's really only two buttons, a left click and a right click, right? So the left click is anything to do with formatting, colors, fonts, right? So if I left click this, for example, a little drop down menu comes up. I could change colors, I could change fonts. left click, formatting. Anything to do with right click, okay, you'll see this wheel pop up. Don't worry about what this name is, this context menu. It's this little wheel, right? And what it does is you can add any element to this, right? So if I right click this wheel, all these different elements here. Okay, what's an element? I'm gonna add a very popular one that comes up at the 9 o'clock. One click of a button. There you go. Now you have compound growth. Okay, just think about how long it would take you with just PowerPoint to bring out a calculator, to calculate it, and to make this little text box, a little oval, add this little arrow. I just did this in 1 second. Okay, so left click, anything you do format, right click, wheel, right? And that's elements. All right, so this is the only chart I'm going to show you. It's a very simple one, right? I'm going to walk you through this one. The other ones I'll show you, but then not actually walk through, right? It's the classic stack column bar chart, right? Very simple, but very powerful. You probably can use it in most situations when you make a deck, and it's easiest to digest for people in the audience. In this example, this is Team Ferrari. If you follow F1 racing, you know that there's multiple streams of revenue for an F1 racing team, like sponsorship, commercial, and prize money. I will send you the PowerPoint afterwards, and then this will be distributed. So you'll have both the recording and the PowerPoint. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide. There's going to be a workspace here. I'm going to recreate this stack column for you. And so what we do first is we're going to click on this Think Cell button in the top left and click on Charts and Graphs, right? A lot of different types. We're not going to go through all of them. We're just doing stack column. Before I click it, though, notice if I move this to the right, it moves to the right. Flip it down, it flips down. Left, you get it. And I'm going to click on stack column. Okay. Now, when I drop this down, something pops up that looks like Excel, but it's not. It's a data sheet that is specifically tied to this chart in this PowerPoint. And if I update this data sheet, it will update my charter graph. So I'm going to start with the labels. If you remember, it was sponsorship money, right? This one's commercial money. Then it's prize money. Great. If you look over here, you'll see the years and the different columns are different. All I have to do is type in 2020 and the entire series changes. Okay? So these are like a few things that help save a few seconds here, a few seconds there. That's how you get to that 70% save time, right? And now I'm just going to type in the information. It's quite simple. As I type, it's going to update the column. It's even going to add the numbers for me and stack it at the top, right? Okay, I'm going to stop at this third column. I just want to point out, if I type in another number in this specific cell, it's going to add a year into the series, right? We are all about saving you clicks. Both ways are left clicks. I'm going to start with the easiest one. If I hover into this orange square, okay, I'm not clicking anything, as you can see. I'm going to left click now, and then there's a drop-down menu. Change this all gray theme. What you'll see in the drop-down menu is these themes are based on your deck color. So since my company is ThinkCell, it's gonna come up with these ThinkCell colors, right? And now the theme has changed. If you need to change individual cells though, maybe a specific column, for example, instead of highlighting this orange square like this, I'm gonna hover over to the individual segment. I'm gonna left click it. So still left click, and then you see this. This is accent 4. I'm going to change this to, I don't know, green accent 2. Right? That's simple. If you want to change colors faster, I'm going to hold control. I'm just going to click through. Okay, so those three I clicked. I'm still holding control, left clicking them. Accent 4. I'm gonna change it to 3. There you go. I let go of control. So 2 quick ways to add color. And I don't know if you've made stack columns with PowerPoint, it could be quite annoying. This is a lot quicker. It's just a couple clicks with the left click and the drop down menu, and now you have color, right? Now, add color is important. And you might say to yourself at this point, hey, yeah, this is neat, but it's not groundbreaking. I would agree with you. I don't think this is quite groundbreaking yet. But what I think ThinkCell starts to shine is once you start adding those elements, right? That's where it really, really saves you a lot of time. So let's add a couple ones to see how fast we can add these, right? I'm going to add this one really quickly. Look at this one right here, this 19%. What is this 19%, first of all, right? It's the difference between 2020 and 2023 revenue, the whole column. Let's just think about that. If you wanted to do this with PowerPoint, you take out your calculator, you figure out the difference between that percentage, then you make a little text box, put it in, then you make that oval, right? Honestly, I don't even know how to make this arrow. So it would take me quite a bit of time to fumble around and designs of shapes and stuff like that and insert. Here, I'm just gonna right click when it's an orange square. It's gonna be at the 10 o'clock, add total difference arrow, right? So I click on that, I'm gonna default to the first 2 columns, right? So I'm gonna click on this little arrow here. You'll see these 2 anchors pop up, and I just drag it to 2023. Took me a few seconds, right? So really, now we're moving away from saving a few seconds to saving a few minutes, right? And hint, hint, we start getting into saving you a few hours later on, the more advanced stuff. Okay, I'm gonna add one more really quickly. What is this 37%? So this is actually the difference between segments, right? So instead of the entire column, you can actually do the difference between segments. Here it's prize money in 2020, prize money in 2023. So because it's an element, it's a right click. So I'm going to go into this orange square, right click it. It's going to be this 11 o'clock, add level difference arrow. Click on it. You'll see these 2 serrated lines. I'm going to left click this. You'll see the anchors again. And now you can drag it to multiple options. Okay. I'm going to drag it to the example, which is prize money 2020, prize money 2023. Right. And then there you go. That's the 37%. One last element that I think is quite important. So I showed you this one earlier, compound growth. That's the 9 o'clock. But that's not the element I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you this one right here. I'd right click at the 6 o'clock, add Y axis, right? So when I click on that, that gives you those little digits there if you wanted to do that. I always encourage people when I'm demoing ThinkCell, just go in, right click, and just play around with the elements, right? Add it, remove it, just to see what it does to the chart or graph there. Okay. Let me see how we are on time. 22 minutes. Okay, we're good on time. I'm gonna wrap up the charts and graphs, then open it up for questions, just so that we end on time here. Now, the other 2 charts and graphs, I'm not actually going to go through. I just want to point out that we can do this, and you can learn through some of the links that I'll put at the very end. If you are a visual learner, we have videos for this. If you prefer to read, we also have a manual on this. This is what I consider more of an intermediate chart, or waterfall chart. If you have to do accounting or finance classes, you're definitely going to need to use this, right? I just wanted to point out, with our waterfall, it's moving away from, hey, we're saving a few minutes here and there. Now we're actually going into things that ThinkCell can do that PowerPoint cannot do, right? if you take a look at this ThinkCell version right here on the right-hand side, you'll see these stacked columns. You can break those out into different parts. You can't do that PowerPoint. You see this? That's kind of important. I think that's kind of crazy that PowerPoint doesn't do that. What if you had, for example, for your revenue, two products that you need to split? More importantly, what if you had different regions for your revenue? Right? You want to be able to break that into sub columns. So that is one of the biggest things ThinkSo can do. The workaround for this is kind of annoying. Here, it takes a few seconds. Right? Look at this one. Can't go below 0. Here's the line item that goes below the x-axis. So if you had a bad quarter, losses, now you can actually put it in. I don't know how you would do this with PowerPoint. The workaround that'll take a long time to do. And then, of course, as you notice, as I was typing in information, everything adds up automatically with ThinkCell, whereas with PowerPoint, you would have to manually do these subtotals. Now, let's take this to an even more advanced level. I did this with a finance and banking club the other week, and this is specifically forecasting and benchmarking, right? If you needed to do something like that, maybe you're in operations, maybe you're in management, right? Here is where waterfall gets crazy. It's actually just two waterfalls on top of each other, right? But if I just told you to look at this and I said, which scenario would you prefer for your next quarter? Pretty simple. I want scenario 1, right? So it is actually quite complicated to make it. I'll just give you a preview and show you the data sheet. A lot of work putting it in, but as an output, it's very easy for your audience to digest, especially if you're trying to push them towards a specific recommendation. So this is kind of like what it looks like, right? So it does get kind of complicated putting the labels in specific columns and things like that, right? I won't walk you through it. It's in a lot of the online learning materials, but I just wanted to just give you a taste of what can be done besides just a basic bar chart here, right? And then, of course, the mother of all complicated charts and graphs, the Gantt chart. I'd like to show this here because this is actually something you cannot do in PowerPoint. It takes hours to do this, right? You actually have to make it in Excel first. Can you imagine like putting every single one of these little symbols in each cell, right? And then getting all of these numbers just looking like this. And then it takes hours, right? And you know what? People in project management, product management, operations, this is what they do all the time because the Gantt chart shows project timelines, competing roadmaps, maybe, right? Deadlines, a lot of different activities on one. It's a very good output so you can visually see when things are going to happen. It takes a lot of time. With ThinkCell, literally one button, Gantt chart, right? So a lot of neat things to learn, right? I just want to give you an idea, a taste of what you can do, and it can get a lot more complicated on this, right? I just want to show you a couple quick features because people ask me sometimes before I get to features this question a lot. Hey, these data sheets are really cool, Paul, but I use Excel. I live in Excel. No worries, because we actually have a link between Excel and ThinkCell. So let me just pull over this Excel really quickly, right? If you download and install ThinkCell, you'll notice it's actually up here in the top left corner as well. Right? And all you have to do is highlight the data you want to visualize. In this case, will we be able to use the license key after this session? Yes, it's pinned in the chat. So please take a look at the comment in the chat. Okay. all you have to do is highlight the data you want to visualize like this, and then click on the Think So button, top left, click Link to PowerPoint, right? And then choose the type you want. I'm going to just make this simple, stack column, then drop it here, right? Now, you'll know it's linked when you see this little file path, right? Why is it important to link this data? Well, just imagine that Excel, hundreds and hundreds of rows of data, right? Complicated formulas, VLOOKUP, things like that. You change one cell, it changes the whole book. Now all you have to do is, if I change something, let's put it like this, 190, right? Change one couple things in the Excel, right? I'm gonna go back in here. You're gonna notice this little green flag right here, update. If I click on it, it will update charter graph. This is huge, especially if you're in data analytics, where maybe you have like different dashboards, 4 or 5 different charts or graphs tied to one data set, and you change the data. Instead of having to make every single chart or graph again, it's just a click of a button. Right? And if you don't even want to click that button, I'm going to left click this orange square, right? And then you're going to see in the bottom right hand corner right here, update automatically. So I click on that, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It updates automatically. I'm going to just put 200 here. Great, automatic update. Saves accounting teams, a lot of time finance teams that have to do like payroll, maybe monthly reports, right? Anything to do dashboards now, you can automatic the charter graph will automatically update. Especially useful if it's a worksheet that people collaborate on. There's a lot of formulas on there, right? Okay, I'm going to show you 2 quick features, and then we'll wrap up with the slide building here. Okay. This is the answer to what about the rest of the deck? A lot of our clients say, hey, your charts and graphs are great. What about the rest of the deck? How do I tie what I'm talking about, ThinkCell, to data storytelling, right? Well, the library is the answer to that question. If I click on ThinkCell up here to the left, right, you'll see this library button now. I'm going to click on that. And the library button will open up all these templates. We have 253 templates, right? Just to let you see it, because it was on my other screen. All these other templates pop up. And I always mention to people, we were founded by ex-McKinsey consultants. And so that legacy is still in our product. When we look at these templates, it becomes very, very evident. So I'm going to pick on one, for example. There's always some sort of, I don't know, table of contents. I'm going to click on this, right? It's going to insert itself into my deck. All you have to do is just edit this information now quickly, right? So clean, formatted, right? All you have to do is edit it. I won't go through every single one of the templates. I highly encourage you to take a look. We have everything from dashboards. Look at these funnels that come up a lot in case competitions, org charts, right? I'm actually judging our current case competition at ThinkCell. I have seen so many of these different slides that we're seeing right now in those decks, right? So if you do want to do case competitions that are timed or time sensitive, this will save you hours of time. Just pick a template and you type the processes. There's always some sort of process flow in here. I'm going to scroll down and skip towards this ThinkCell charts though. Here's my dirty secret. If I ever need to make a charter graph, I actually go into this first because it's a little bit more complicated. I'm just going to click on this one right here. Right, all I do is insert the type of charter graph I want, right? I'm going to hover over this orange square and left click. And then you're going to see this little pop-up, open data sheet, right? I'm going to click on that. Pops open. And then once I click on that, all I have to do is edit the information in the data sheet to match the information that I want to visualize. So I changed this. EMEA America changed the numbers, right? So nice little, and it's a slide too. So then all you have to do is change the action title, change the subtitles there. This is the number one request we get when I do these workshops. Can you give us more templates? So this is what I meant by, I'm going to share you this deck afterwards, and you're going to have this little appendix, all these templates. So it's going to be super helpful for you in your slide building, right? But first of all, I'm not going to walk through this, but I want to point out I added a decision tree for you, right? So I get this question sometimes. I don't know what chart or graph to use. Start with this decision tree, right? Answer the question and goes down to a certain thing. And let's say it ends up at waterfall, then you know which one to select. Go into any of these templates with waterfall, go into either the library or this little end of this deck and find a waterfall, and then you can add it into your deck. Now, the actual slides that I'm adding for you, these templates, super useful. I give this whenever I work with case competition workshops, right? Maybe you don't know what type of chart or graph you want, but you know the case, the use case that you're looking for, right? For example, if you wanted to look for growth by industry, you could use this bar chart, right? Maybe you want to do customer segments, you could use this bubble chart, right? A lot of different use cases. We have value creation for different ones. Here, look at this one. This one's always market share when you do MECO, right? And of course, these are think so templates. So I click on it. Hey, bottom right-hand corner, open data sheet. Okay. We got exit planning stuff. So this is a nice little combo one, right? Here's waterfall again for churn, right? Here's investments for doing, investments related internships. And of course, the finance ones. These are very useful. P&L, target actual, right? So take a look at those. They're going to be for you afterwards. It's going to really help you with your assignments, right? I'm going to show you one last feature, and then we'll end with the slide making, right? And this is the Ask Brian AI Assistant. This is our answer to what about AI? How are you taking advantage of this, right? First thing you want to do is you want to go to Ask Brian. Okay, I'm going to put this into the chat. I want to point out one quick thing when you follow the instructions to install this. If you are able to install it on the initial instructions, great, no problem. If you get some sort of pop-up that prevents you from your school's administrator, right, don't worry. Here's the important part. Scroll down on this page to the FAQ. In the FAQ, there will be a question about, hey, I got this administrator pop-up that prevented me, and they'll give you instructions. So there's actually two sets of instructions on how to install this, right? All right, once it's installed, okay, what you want to do is you want to click on your home button here in PowerPoint, and it's going to be to the far right. Ask Brian. When I do that, it's going to pull up a little panel to the right. And Ask Brian has 4 features at the moment. The first one, if there's any reason to use Ask Brian at all, this is ChatGPT Premium for free. And you get 6 months of this. Look in the bottom left, OpenAI. This runs off of ChatGPT's API. Go crazy with it. Charge your company as much as you want in terms of prompts, right? I wanted to show you these other 3, though, because I'm assuming everyone knows how to use ChatGPT. So with this specific one here, translation, you can actually translate complete slides, right? So you go to the slide you want. I'm going to click current slide, change it to a different, I don't know, I'll change it to, actually let's do Hindi, right? Insert slide. And then what you're going to see is that it creates another slide that's translated, but look at the bolding and the formatting, it's clean, right? So that saves you a lot of time. If you don't want to just do that current slide, you could do all slides, whole deck. So pretty neat feature to help you translate into different things. I like this one as well, this data access. It's kind of a merging of research plus slide making. So if I go to this public companies, for example, and there's also statistics by Statista, right? So if you want to look at all their data sets, I'll do the public companies one. Right here, I'm going to put in one that's been in the news a lot lately, right? I click Tesla, right? Let's do their earnings by quarter. I just click insert chart. Okay. Then it'll insert a chart and an entire slide. Look at this. Pretty clean, has an action title, has a subtitle. And look, this is a think sell chart. So I'm going to right click it. And then I can add all the fun stuff here, like compound growth. Okay. Last one is more of a text assistant. So everything to do with like shortening something by a certain 10, 20% or 50%. You could create your own custom prompts here, tell it to do things. If I wanted to add bullet points to this, for example, click on that. And then it'll preview what it'll look like here. And I just click apply changes. Okay. And they could do a little bit of, and I like this one. This is my favorite part of this text assistant, this little action title part, right? If I click on this action title, you could suggest action titles from this. And it'll analyze the actual slide for you, and then it will give you some suggestions on what that can look like. It's a little bit slow today. Give me a second. There you go. And then, hey, this one looks pretty good. You can click on this one. All right. So we started about 3 minutes past. I think that's about enough time I would need in order to show you the last part, which is the slide deck building. Right. Let's bring it all together. A little bit of think sell, data storytelling. How do you build specific slides? Right. I like to show this example when I teach people slide building. I do entire workshops on just slide building. So I'm giving you a little bit of a preview. You had the idea of the data story, bringing two things together. How do you put it into a slide now? Well, this was the prompt to our last case competition. I want to point out kind of the thought process from analyzing to building an effective analysis into putting it actually into a slide. So in this prompt, we ask people to outline the top 10 countries in terms of wine exports. That's the key word here, wine exports by volume. And the other key word here that we were looking for is 2023. So we gave this data set, these two, right? And really the first trip or challenge is to see if you read the prompt correctly, because it asks for wine exports by volume. Okay. And also say outline. We didn't tell what type of chart or graph to use. We just said outline it. So there was no one answer. But the key thing to notice is the volume part. So we purposely put volume and value. And what you want to do is ignore the value part. We only wanted you to use this top part. That was on purpose. If you send in something with value, you failed, right? So that was the first thing that tripped a lot of people. The second thing, 2023. So this gives you both 2022 and 2023 numbers. We want you to ignore the 2022, right? So really, you only need that 2023 column. All right. First, after those initial kind of analysis that you might think about, the thing that you should do is start looking for trends that connect the two, right? Or connect. One thing that jumps out to me, I don't know about you, but I look at this table here, everything's negative. I think it'd be fair to say that everything's declining in terms of wine exports, right? The harder analysis or conclusion, and these are what we call like intermediate conclusions, right? If I looked at all 10 of these countries, they're mostly Europe, right? There's many ways to describe this. Again, no right answer. But if you said in your slide, hey, 5 out of 10 of these countries are from Europe: Italy, Spain, France, Germany, Portugal. I would agree with you. Yeah, it feels like they dominate Europe dominates the wine market by volume. Another way to look at it, and here's the A++ answer. Some people got this. Look at the top 3: France, Spain, Italy, right? And if you actually added up the numbers and you kind of calculated, these 3 countries accounted for about 2/3 of the global wine export by volume, right? So that's kind of the initial analysis, some of the elements, what goes into a good slide, right? I like to talk about the pyramid as kind of the theory piece of slide writing. There's really 2 ways to approach it: a bottom up and a top down. You look at this triangle, it's inverse or it's upwards, right? So let's start with the scientific one. This is usually for professors, lecturers, maybe research conferences, right? And think about your own class. They might often I don't know about yours, but my professors will always start with their analysis. Hey, I notice all these things are happening. What's going on? They always like to start that way. What's going on? Right? Maybe in the middle of their lecture, they start connecting some dots, right? This trend's happening here. This trend's happening there. And then they always end their work, like their lecture, with the big message. Therefore, I believe this, or therefore we should do this, right? How long does that take? Well, it's a whole lecture. It's like an hour. Let's think about business though, right? If I talk to my CEO, his office down the hall, he'll maybe, if I'm lucky, give like 30 seconds to look at a deck. Doesn't have time. So what you got to do is put the key message first, bold, biggest at the top, right? Think about the whole deck. Maybe there's like 10 slides, right? The key message of each slide's at the top. Flipping through, maybe page 4 or slide 4. Wait a minute, how did you get that conclusion? All right, then they look in the middle, right? The subtitle, or those preliminary interpretations. This is where I showed you, hey, everything's going negative, right? Oh, hey, did you notice 2/3 of the countries dominate the export market of wine? Okay. Oh, okay, I agree with you. Now, what if you didn't believe, like 2/3? I don't believe it. Then the analysis comes. That's the charter graph. That's what we spend a lot of the time today building, right? Oh, okay, I see your charter graph. That's how you got the 2/3. Makes a lot of sense. Now that we have the theory, what does it actually start looking like, right? So here's possibly one of the answers. The conclusion is that Europe dominates the wine market, right? You want to add a little bit more, you can even say amid declining volumes. If this looks familiar, this is from the data story that we talked about with the internet browsers. Despite Chrome's dominance, Europe dominates despite this, right? That's a good way to create those conclusions or key messages, right? What's the supporting arguments? Those are the first 2 kind of intermediary thoughts that I mentioned, right? Italy and Spain and France account for 2/3. I know we're kind of at time. I need about 2-3 more minutes, and then we'll wrap up. And then worldwide wine exports declined by 6.3%. Okay, so that actually calculates the numbers here. That makes sense. So instead of just saying, hey, it's just declining worldwide, you could go that extra step and put in the percentage. And then the basic facts analysis could be the actual bar chart, or any other chart that you want to show. So putting it all together, this is what putting it into a slide, what we just put from a triangle, it could kind of look like this: key message here. I just copy pasted it here to visualize for you what it looks like. And then you have a subtitle. The subtitle describes kind of that intermediate argument that you have. So in this case, it was that 3 countries accounts for 2/3 of global volume. I like using a bar chart for the data and facts. It's the easiest to digest. Okay. And so I wanted to show you, this is actually the rubric that we used to compare people's submissions, right? So we have the 3 countries here, and then the rest kind of here. Here's a nice little trick that you could do with bar charts to make it easier to read. Since we're really focusing on those 3, highlight those 3 a different color, and you know how to do that now. You left click, you change the color, or you hold control and you left click, and then you change the color, right? And then you change the rest of the countries to one color. So it makes it contrast and stick out, right? Um, and of course, some of these details could be different for the submissions, but in general, what we were looking for, Europe dominates the wine export market. You have a little bit of information about why. Okay, hey, look, it could be 3 countries, 2/3, or 5 out of the 10, for example. And then a very simple chart that kind of outlines that. And that would have been a 10 out of 10, what we were looking for. I'm adding these 2 charts really quickly. This gives you kind of a checklist of what to put into your charts and graphs, like if you want to be comprehensive about it, right? What labels to put. And as you know, these are all elements, right? So you right click, you add in all these different elements here, like that little y-axis that I told you. And then last but not least, here's a nice little checklist for you of do's and don'ts. Okay, it goes into specifically font size, colors, some design basics. For example, like don't use white text on black background, for example. So take a look at that. Very helpful with making more impactful slides. And remember, if you take one thing away, try to have it simple, right? Don't put too many ideas into it, right? People hear statistics, but they feel those stories. So try to keep it simple and put it together in the context of the storyboard that you are trying to make. This is just links, as I mentioned. It'll be in the deck for you to learn on your own. If you wanted to click, watch videos, learn the Gantt chart, for example, or how to do those scenarios and forecasting with waterfall. And that's it, right? So I went a little bit over 4 minutes. I apologize. Always try to keep it in time. But if you are inclined, I would appreciate it if you put some thoughts into a survey. Scan this QR code. You could drop any thoughts, any comments here. I'm going to open it up to final questions. I saw a couple coming in, but you can unmute or you could type if you want. So I'm going to go through this as we see any more questions coming in. Okay, so the PowerPoint will be sent in, right? Will we be able to use the license? Yes, you can use the code after the license. Let's see, same license key once again. So will the same license key once again after expiration? So after expiration, a new license will be issued to IITG's Consulting and Analytics Club, and then they will distribute that. You will get the slides after this as well. All right, is there any other, can you send the key once more? Yes. Certainly can send the key again. It's actually, if you look, there's a little pin at the top of the chat. Next, this is Paul Tran. If you haven't downloaded, click on that, and then you'll be able to see the key again. Any other questions? So I like that questions were coming in. I tried my best to answer as it was coming in. The pin comment is invisible. Oh, okay, so okay, so let me just drop it in now. All right, here you go. There you go. All right. Any other questions? So far, I like the questions coming in. You guys were all engaging. It's always nice to have a very engaging crowd. If you don't have any questions, feel free to put a reaction just to kind of let me know if this was helpful. It always gives me an idea of how to improve these, and then if I'm going in the right train. Okay, if there aren't any more questions, you can feel free to email me if you think of anything that comes up, I'll put my email one more time in the chat. And then other than that, I wish you all a great evening. And I thank you for taking the time out. I know it's a little bit late, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And happy charting.